Deputy Prime Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam, Dr. Jan Kees Vys, the President of RSPO, Mr. Darrell Weber, the Secretary General, members of the Round Table, ladies and gentlemen. When I received an invitation from RSPO to speak at this round table, I consulted with two good friends in WWF Singapore, Elaine Tan and Jean Stem. They both urged me to accept the invitation and told me the wonderful story of how it all began in 2001. I also consulted with the President of the Nature Society Singapore, Dr. Sean Lam, and asked his advice. And Dr. Lam also urged me to accept, saying that it will give me an opportunity to engage with an important constituency in our shared mission of promoting sustainable development. I also consulted my wife, and she was more negative. She was more negative. Yeah, it's important for you to listen to that. She observed that almost every year, Singapore suffers from haze emanating from forest fires in Indonesia. And she asked me, is it not the case that some of these forest fires are set by palm oil plantations which continue to use fire to clear land for plantations? And I said, yes, but the members of RSPO do not use fire to clear land. That the RSPO members are the good guys, and only the bad guys continue to use fire to clear land. I want to make 2 points. First, that the image of palm oil is being tarnished by the bad behavior of a minority of the industry. And in the minds of the public, in Singapore at least, palm oil has a negative image. The second thing I want to say is more provocative. Satellite photography now enable us to identify precisely where these hot spots are and who are the owners of the plantations which are using fire to clear land. And I would suggest to the NGOs in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore to join hands and to name and shame these plantations. Talking about palm oil brings back many happy memories of the 6 years I spent in Washington, D.C. as the ambassador of Singapore to the United States. During those years, 1984 to 1990, ASEAN had only 6 ambassadors. And the 6 of us were very good friends, and we used to travel together to all parts of America, selling the ASEAN story, networking with Americans, and explaining our interests and concerns to the American people. On these ASEAN road shows, I would always be asked to speak about the importance of free trade to the United States and to ASEAN. And the then Malaysian ambassador, Bertie Talala, would always be talking about palm oil and to counter the very strong anti-palm oil propaganda which was then prevalent in America. I remember that on several occasions, my good friend Bertie Talala said to me that he was tired of talking about palm oil, and can we please switch roles? Could I talk about palm oil and he would talk about trade? And so I want to tell the Malaysian palm oil industry that I acceded to Bertie's request, and on several occasions I spoke about palm oil and my Malaysian colleagues spoke about trade. I know that many years have passed since I come back from Washington, and the issue may be time-barred, but if it's not, I think the Malaysian palm oil industry owes me at least a very good lunch. I also suspect that many members of the public, not just in Singapore, are not aware of the many uses of palm oil. They are also not aware of the importance of palm oil to the world economy and to the economies of our two immediate neighbors, Malaysia and Indonesia. So let me just share, not with you, the roundtable members, but through the media with the public, some facts I learned in my research for this occasion. I learned that palm oil is the second most traded vegetable oil after soy. I learned that almost 90% of the world's palm oil exports are produced in Malaysia and Indonesia. And I was surprised at how ubiquitous palm oil is. It is used as an edible oil in cooking, in baking, and in animal feed. Its non-edible uses include soap, detergent, oleochemical products, gum, candles, cosmetics, fuels, etc. As a good friend of mine from Wilmar, Jeremy Goon, said to me at lunch recently, we use palm oil from the moment we get up in the morning until the moment we go to sleep at night. In view of the above facts, the certain prospect is that the industry will continue to grow in the coming years, especially in the Asian markets of China, India, and Indonesia. RSPO's vision to transform the market and to make sustainable palm oil the norm is therefore a very important one. The story of how RSPO began is a teachable one. In 2001, WWF approached the Malaysian Palm Oil Association, Golden Agri Plantations, and a number of good companies in the United Kingdom, Switzerland, and Netherlands, Unilever, for example, Netherlands, to explore the possibility of starting a roundtable on sustainable palm oil. The responses were positive, and as a result, the first roundtable took place in Kuala Lumpur in 2003. In 2004, RSPO had 47 members. Today, the membership is 1,000. The membership, and this is very important, the membership comprises of stakeholders from the 7 sectors of the industry, namely the producers, the plantations, the processors, the traders, the manufacturers of consumer goods, the retailers, the banks and investors, and finally the NGOs. So the whole value chain is brought together in this roundtable. I would summarize RSPO's achievements in the last decade briefly as follows. 1, the adoption of the 8 principles and criteria for sustainable palm oil mentioned by DPM Tharman in 2005. The adoption of the Members' Code of Conduct in 2006. The adoption of the certification system in 2007. The adoption of the supply chain certification system in 2008. The launch of the RSPO trademark in 2011. And perhaps most important of all, the creation of an inclusive forum which is progressively transforming the whole industry globally. The first decade has been a period of very significant and substantial progress. On the 25th of August last year, the industry reached a turning point by hitting the first 1 million hectares of certified production area. The latest number is 1.5 million hectares. The global production of CSPO has reached 7.7 million tons. While we celebrate these milestones, we should remind ourselves that 7.7 million tons is only 14% of the global palm oil production. In other words, 86% of the global production is not certified. I hope that when we meet again in 10 years' time, the whole or nearly whole of the global production would have come under RSPO's certification. This is a big ambition, but I think with determination, the goal is achievable, or at least we should try. I hope that in the next 10 years, RSPO will also take on an additional agenda, which is to promote the conservation of biodiversity in the countries in which palm oil plantations exist. I want to now talk about Singapore and RSPO. Although there are no palm oil plantations in Singapore, as DPM Taman said, Singapore has a stake in RSPO. Some of the oil companies are listed in Singapore. Many of the owners live here, and Singapore is a major center for trading, including the trading of vegetable oil. Singapore will benefit if all palm oil plantations in Indonesia, Malaysia, and elsewhere were to meet the RSPO standard. I want to also recall that one of the 7 sectors included in RSPO's membership is banks and investors. And I have noticed with disappointment that none of Singapore's banks is presently a member of RSPO. I also have noticed that, yeah, please. I also have noticed that there are several foreign multinational banks which have branches or offices in Singapore are members of RSPO. So what I want to do this morning is to respectfully request the Singapore Bank to consider joining RSPO. We want Singapore to be known, our banking industry to be known not only for their transparency, good corporate governance, but also for ethical banking and ethical investing. And I think that it would be good for Singapore if our banks were to join RSPO. I hope that the DPM, who is also our finance minister, will endorse my sentiment. I shall conclude. The theme of this roundtable is whether the RSPO is a business model for achieving sustainability in the next 10 years. Sorry, let me repeat that. The theme of this roundtable is whether the RSPO is a business model for achieving sustainability. And my short answer to this question is yes. And let me now give you my 3 reasons for my positive answer. First, the roundtable unites the industry and the environmental movement. And this is such a wonderful role model for the world. Having been a member of the preparatory committee for the Stockholm Conference in 1972, and having chaired both the preparatory committee and the negotiations at the Earth Summit in Rio 1992, I must tell you that this is exactly what we would like to see come about. It is far more productive for business and the environmental movement to collaborate, rather to confront each other and to indulge in mutual recriminations. Second, the roundtable includes the stakeholders from all sectors of the industry, both upstream and downstream, as well as the NGOs. And I think this is, again, a role model. And third, the roundtable seeks to promote sustainability in a pragmatic, step-by-step approach, beginning with a set of principles and criteria, progressing to a code of conduct, and then on to a system of certification, and finally, the issuance of a trademark. In my view, the RSPO model is therefore a very good model and a viable business model to promote sustainable development in the future. Thank you.